Welcome to the most photographed, most beloved, most visited stargazing place in the world, the Grifith Observatory. It's changed quite a bit recently. It's undergone a 4-year, $93 million expansion and renovation. And yet from the outside, it looks very much the same. I'm Leonard Nimoy, and I love this place. I'm going to take you through it to show you what's new. But first, I want to tell you the story of this amazing building. It all started when a remarkable man looked through a remarkable telescope. This is the telescope at Mount Wilson, perched high above the LA basin. And this is the man who would look through it. His first name was the same as his last, Griffith J. Griffith. As a young man, he immigrated from Wales to seek his fortune in America. He lived in New York and San Francisco, and by age 32 had made his first million investing in silver mines. When Griffith moved to Los Angeles, he invested in land, buying over 4,000 acres of a rugged, hilly tract called Rancho Los Feliz. He believed LA would one day become a world-class city, and that it deserved a world-class public park. So, in an act of great civic generosity, he donated most of his estate to the city of Los Angeles to create Griffith Park. It was the turn of the 20th century, and Griffith, like all of America, was fascinated with the new discoveries of science.
Griffith was interested in astronomy, and he got the chance to go up to Mount Wilson, to the Mount Wilson Observatory, really the most cutting-edge research observatory in the world at the time. And he was able to look through the 60-inch telescope, then the biggest telescope in the world, and he was amazed and profoundly transformed by what he saw. And he was moved to reply, after looking through that eyepiece, if everyone could look through that telescope, it would change the world.
Griffith felt so strongly about sharing this experience that before he died, he gave a $100,000 gift to the city of Los Angeles to build a science hall and observatory. But before it could be built, the design was powerfully influenced by a very earthly event. The disastrous Long Beach quake of 1933.
When we look at the original drawings, we see terracotta tile on the outside of the building. The domed roof is also made of tile. It's a very classic California building from the 1920s. After the Long Beach earthquake, it was recognized that there was considerable damage to what are known as masonry structures, and the idea was to make it a much simpler building.
What you ended up with was walls that in many places were a foot thick, of solid poured concrete with extensive steel rebar running through it. As a result, the observatory is probably one of the safest places in Southern California to be in the event of an earthquake.
At present, there are several hundred people gathered here in the planetarium proper.
Griffith Observatory officially opened its doors to the public on May 14th, 1935.
This building is a noble structure, marvelously placed, poised above the dwellings of men, with a magical carpet of city light below it, and yearning to look into the sky, there to gain a truer perspective of their own significance in the general scheme of things.
During World War II, soldiers were stationed there to look out for enemy ships and planes that might attack Los Angeles. Fortunately, that never happened. After the war, the observatory became the home of big dreams. It was a place to learn what the world's leading scientists were thinking about space travel.
One of the best examples of this is, in fact, the first director's transformation of planetarium programming. And that was Dr. Dinsmore Alter, and his interest in traveling to the moon, long before we ever actually did that, prompted him to have contrived special effects projectors that created zoom effects and such that gave the audience the feeling that they were leaving the Earth, traveling through space. And they get close to the moon, they'd land on the moon, and they would be in the environment of the lunar mountains and craters. Well, this was, in fact, an extraordinary development.
In the process of showing visitors the stars, Grifith Observatory became one itself. Its first appearance in Hollywood movies was, oddly enough, as an empire 25,000 feet below the surface of the Earth.
For many days before the end of our Earth, we will look into the night sky and notice a star. As this star approaches us,
The observatory's big break came in Rebel Without a Cause, starring James Dean, where it was for the first time portrayed as what it actually was, an observatory. Over 200 films, TV shows, and music videos have been shot at Grifith Observatory.
certainly is a lot of switches. Yes, it's quite intricate.
Despite its willingness to play along in movie make-believe, the observatory is a place where people have always turned to find out what's real.
Griffith Planetarium was, the preferred planetarium, was the one which the Apollo crews used most to become familiar with the sky and the navigation stars.
By the end of the 20th century, over 7 million visitors had literally loved this place to pieces. It desperately needed expansion and renovation. So in January of 2002, these well-worn doors were closed for improvement.
The good news was that the building was very much intact. The bad news was that it had a lot of deferred maintenance and just wear and tear after 70 years and 70 million visitors.
One part of the building that was in need of serious attention was the giant planetarium dome.
It's a copper dome over a concrete shell. And one of the great challenges of the renovation and restoration was that that dome leaked very badly. There was no waterproof membrane between the concrete and the copper. It was an engineering feat in itself to figure out how to replace that copper without attaching to the dome as we worked from the top down.
The solution was to build scaffolding inside the planetarium up to the ceiling. It then emerged through a hole in the roof and hovered over the outside of the dome like an umbrella. Workers could then climb up to remove the copper panels, waterproof the dome, and replace the copper covering. The observatory needed more room, but adding on to the classic lines of the old building would destroy its look. The only option was to build underground.
When I think about the construction of the Grifith Observatory, there's three challenges. One is the access. There's only one access point, and so in sequencing the work is very important because you don't want to trap yourself in. The second challenge here is the excavation. We're talking about 30,000 cubic yards of dirt.
And when you dig that deep, there are always surprises, especially in earthquake country.
We excavated down far enough, 30 feet below the front lawn, that we split toe of this fault plane. Some of the hillside had sloped and moved outwards into the excavation. We had to immediately shore and buttress up against it to avoid the surrounding dirt from collapsing in on the excavation.
As the hole was being stabilized, another extraordinary feat of engineering was taking place under the observatory. In order to tunnel beneath it, this solid concrete structure had to be lifted off its foundation.
You jack it up through hydraulic jacks, and you're lifting up the building to a point where it's weightless. It kept us awake at night because this is all based on theoretical values. It's all theory. It's not an exact science.
Fortunately, the perfect amount of force was used, and the building didn't buckle or crack.
Holding the building up at zero gravity allows us to go underneath, excavate entire floor level, create the space that we needed to for this expansion.
of the other great challenges was to create a huge underground exhibit space free of support columns that might block visitors' views of the exhibits.
It really wasn't just a matter of building the hole and then covering it up with a roof. This is a topping over this hole that needs to be able to accept the weight of a fire truck coming in and getting into the building. So there was an enormous structural challenge.
The solution was to pour gigantic concrete support beams in place, and then to pour a thick roof on top. This required a continuous round-the-clock concrete pour until it was finished.
What's interesting is that you look at all of this now and it looks like it was the easiest thing in the world to do. It always existed that way. And I guess that's the talent of the expanded team to allow the visitor to think that it was as easy as that, but it wasn't.
Okay, it's time for that tour I promised you. You know what's exciting about this place? Everything here is made to stimulate the imagination, to give us new ways to understand our universe, starting here at the Foucault pendulum. It demonstrates something that's very difficult to prove in any other physical way, that we are standing on a rotating planet. There are some places on Earth where this demonstration doesn't work. Can you guess where they are? You can check your answer with one of the friendly Grifith Observatory guides. Meanwhile, if you look up from here, you'll see the beautifully restored ceiling murals, originally painted by Hugo Ballin in 1934. And if you look real close, you can see a tiny square of dark paint. It's a secret spot left by the restoration artist to show how the mural looked before it was cleaned off. Well, it used to be a secret spot. This place is filled with visual surprises like that. It's a treasure hunt for the observer. Here, in the Hall of the Eye, are some of the key developments that have allowed people to gaze deeper and deeper into space. There are lots of ways here for budding astronomers to test their skills of observation. Beyond the visible is an exhibit of remarkable images, many from NASA spacecraft, which reveal the universe in ways our eyes cannot see and vastly expand the body of knowledge about our world and beyond. This is a perfect replica of the telescope that 400 years ago allowed Galileo to view the moons of Jupiter. And observing in California shows why, for the last century, from Mount Wilson to the NASA Mars rovers, our part of the world has been considered the Alexandria of modern astronomy.
Most people don't really think about the fact that California played a leadership role in the development of world astronomy. Around the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, astronomers were drawn to California. You had dark skies, clear air. You had steady flowing air in the mountains, which was essential to doing precise astronomy. And it nurtured, in fact, the development of astrophysics, and the modern, expanding universe was discovered in Southern California. California also spearheaded space exploration. Jet Propulsion Laboratory, just over the hill, really, from Grifith Observatory, obviously has been a leader in getting us to other worlds and seeing what they are like. And even public astronomy at Grifith Observatory was cultivated in Southern California.
The west wing of the original building contains the Amundsen Hall of the Sky. This is the place to find out about the mechanics of our solar system. In fact, the exhibits in these alcoves answer the questions most often asked by visitors to the observatory. In the West Rotunda, you'll see one of the hottest shows around, a live look at the sun.
Grifith Observatory was the first public observatory to be fully equipped for observation of the sun. And it performs this with the triple beam celestat, or solar telescope.
The observatory has touched many people's lives, and the renovation has been a chance for people to give back. The new Samuel Ocean Planetarium here is named for one man who was continually inspired by his visits here.
My husband loves astronomy and enjoyed visiting Grifith Observatory to explore and to learn and to understand our universe. so it was natural for our foundation to lend its support to the observatory. The Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Ocean Family Foundation reflects Sam's interests, the way he viewed the world, and how he lived his life, believing every individual could and should make a difference. The Samuel Ocean Planetarium will be an extension of what my husband loved and wanted to do, to continue to inspire future generations.
The planetarium has undergone a total transformation. The innovative Grifith star shows are beamed from the newest Zeiss fiber optic Universarium Mark 9 star projector. And the first of its kind, a digitally animated, all-dome, laser-projected event centered in the universe. It's a cinematic experience not to be missed. We're now underground in the Gunther depths of space. It's full of new exhibits made possible by the NASA space missions that are redefined our place in the universe. Telescopes, underground. That's right. And if you look through them, you'll see something quite extraordinary. It's called the Big Picture.
The big picture is unprecedented. Even when we were imagining it, it was hard to actually wrap your mind around what the big picture was actually going to represent. It's the largest astronomical image ever produced.
The Big Picture image is a survey of the skies captured by the Samuel Ocean Telescope at Palomar Mountain in Southern California and processed at the Caltech Supercomputing Center in nearby Pasadena. The photograph was divided into 114 separate pictures and preserved in ceramic porcelain fired onto individual steel panels. These were then reassembled and mounted at Griffith Observatory. Here's the amazing thing about that wall of stars and galaxies. It's a picture of a section of the night sky that would be covered by your finger if you held it like this, about a foot from your face. And yet, through these telescopes, we're down here in the Gunther depths of space, you can see and count nearly 2 million celestial objects. That's about 1.9999999 million more than you'd see with the naked eye.
Probably the most striking thing about the big picture is that it conveys a greater richness of things and wonders in the universe. And that's what I hope will be the main reaction of people who see it, a sense of wonder, of amazing things that are out there in space, and that we're beginning to understand.
Space exploration has increased our knowledge of the universe and our place in it in ways that early astronomers could only dream of. The planets of our solar system were once only distant objects. Today, thanks especially to data collected by NASA missions, the planets are landscapes we can imagine visiting. That's the idea behind our solar system. Here, you can find out more about the other planets orbiting our sun. Want to know what it would be like to visit Jupiter? Well, for starters, step up and weigh yourself. On Jupiter, I would weigh, 450 pounds. I think I'd rather weigh myself on Pluto. Oh, no, it's not a planet anymore. I know. Let's try Mercury. The models in the exhibit are accurately scaled to one another. And at the end of the line is poor, controversial, dwarf planet Pluto. It really is tiny, just 1/5 the mass of our own moon. By comparison, the sun is gigantic. If Pluto is this big, then how big is the sun? It's as big as that giant glowing drum. And inside that giant glowing drum is a very special place. Welcome to the Leonard Nimoy Event Horizon Theater, a place for discovery of all kinds. Let's go see what's going on in there right now. If Pluto is this big, then how big is the sun? It's as big as that giant glowing drum. And inside that giant glowing drum is a very special place. The Leonard Nimoy Event Horizon Theater is a complicated and interesting title. Leonard Nimoy, obviously, that's me. Event Horizon is a place where the thing happens. The thing, whatever it is where it happens. And it's an extremely useful space for lectures, for demonstrations.
For necking. I mean, you only have the Planetarium Theater for holding hands and kissing in the dark. Now you have the Leonard Nimoy Event Horizon.
Tell everything. Keep some things should be a secret. The city has authorized the hiring of a curator for that space. There will be a demonstration. There will be live feeds from NASA or JPL. There will be scientific discussions and explorations. There will be films. I'm very excited about sitting there myself and watching and listening as some of those events take place. I began by telling you how Griffith J. Griffith was forever changed by one look through a telescope. It was his dream to share that transforming experience with the public. And since 1935, more than 7 million people have come to the observatory's rooftop dome to look through the 12-inch refracting telescope. More people have looked through this telescope than any other in the world. And each time that happens, one man's dream is passed to another. Griffith J. Griffith's life was transformed when he looked out into the night sky. I invite you to take a look. Grifith Observatory, inspiring the future, one imagination at a time.